There are only a handful of people in every life who become indelibly etched into one's mind. And for me, Don Burns was one of those people. When I received an email from Sharon telling me of Don's passing, my mind went first of all to Eileen, and then to Len, Ken, Brad, and Sharon. And my heart went out to them thinking of their loss, the loss of a husband, the loss of a father. But from there, my mind went to Don and the many times we shared together and talking about life and talking about different experiences. And I don't know how many times when on my way home I would look up and make that turn onto Anderson Street and see the lights on in the shop and think, I need to stop and say hi to Don. And I'd stop in and we'd begin to talk, and our conversations went on and on and on. And as I reflect on those conversations, I think of all the good times we then had together. And Don was not only a very conscientious and hard worker, great provider for his family, which I really respected. He was also a straight shooter, a really straight shooter. And I really loved that. And the fact that I always knew where I stood with Don. In fact, I always knew where I stood with everything with Don, because that's just the way he was, and that was very good. And during those visits at the shop, we'd talk about all kinds of things. Our conversations went anywhere and everywhere. So we talked about work, about how things were at the church, about life in general, about the Lord as to where Don was in his relationship with him, to people, which was always very interesting, and then on to motorcycles, snowmobiles, and the cottage that Don was so fond of. And we seldom had an agenda in our conversation, though usually our conversation went in whatever direction Don was really thinking about at that moment in time. And I'll never forget the night, though, that I brought up a conversation concerning the challenges of leaving work behind at the end of the day. And I shared with Don my experience of working with my dad as he owned an appliance business, and some of the struggles that were there, and how sometimes it was difficult to go home at night and to sit around the dinner table after I'd done something wrong or done something foolish at work during the day. And one of those times, as I was thinking, I shared with Don about the delivery that I was making on New Year's Eve. And I was on one end of a stereo combo, very nice cabinet, very expensive TV. And as we went through the doorway, I stepped on a cat and went to the right and then went to the left and scraped about a 7-inch gouge into this brand new stereo TV combo. And I told Don about that, and he laughed. And then I told him about the time that I let go of a washing machine and saw it chase my dad down the basement stairs. And Don laughed and laughed and laughed. And then I told him, but you know what, Don? I said, you know what was really hard? It was really hard to be able to go home and face my dad after things like that happened. And as we talked a little bit more, I had shared, I said, you know, it's not easy, really easy working for your dad. And Don paused, and this is where I really grew in my respect for Don. He paused and looked at me, and with tears in the corners of his eyes, said, you know what? I needed to hear that. I really needed to hear that, and I'll remember that. So Ken, I don't know if he remembered or not, but at least he thought about it, and it was something on his heart and his mind. So I hope he did. You know, a number of years ago, we were back in Fergus, and I'd share with Linda, you know, there's one thing I want to do while I'm here, and that's to stop and see Don again. And so I can remember driving up to the house, and the shop was closed, so I went over to the door and knocked, and no one answered, and I was a little disappointed, got back in the car, and I was just getting ready to leave, and Don pulled up. And what was so amazing is we were able to pick up right where we had left off a few years before, and our conversations went on again, catching up, laughing and reminiscing about the past. And I really appreciated that time. And overall, I really treasure the times that I had with Don. And I can't think of many experiences that really stand out in a stronger way than those memories with him. Two men, open and honest, sharing and talking together about work, about life, about family and friends and the Lord. And my prayer for you, Eileen, and for Ken and Len and Brad and Sharon, is that the God of all grace and the God of all comfort will comfort you in your loss. And the peace of God, which passes understanding, will keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Linda and I love you. We're praying for you, and we're trusting God to minister to your heart. May the Lord bless you.